This is Impact Healthcare, people and strategies that are disrupting the health benefits industry. And now, here's your host, healthcare benefits industry expert and the originator of the transparent health benefits movement, Lester Morales.
Welcome back to another episode of the Impact Healthcare podcast. And this episode is near and dear to my heart because for anybody that's been listening, my mother for 41 years was a nurse for the VA hospital. And I always tend to joke about this because it is how my mom showed me love. And I say that because anytime I was sick as a child, and I would say, Mom, my stomach hurts, I can't go to school. The one question that she would always ask, do you think you're more important than our veterans? Nope, I'm going to school. So I have another nurse that at the end of the day, I'm going to say this from the bedside to the boardroom. And although, not boardroom in the conversation of that's where you work, you're still definitely in the trenches, but it is having a conversation on the value that proactivity and things that you can do really make sense. And who are we having those conversations with? Who needs to know it is the C-suite. So I love this conversation. Kimberlee, for the audience out there, give us an introduction to you and your wonderful company. And the most important question, I am a big person that believes that the people that get up every day wanting to face the harder road, the salmon, there's a story behind it. There's a why behind it. I'd love to understand and know your why.
Oh, baby. Well, so I'm Kimberlee. I've been a nurse for many decades. I come from a long line of nurses, in fact, and a fan of your mom as well. I'm a veteran, so I have a soft spot for the vets too. So our company, Specialty Care Management, we specialize in mitigating the risk of high cost claims. And that obviously includes cost containment strategies, but quite honestly, when you're talking about risk, it's not just the price tag that you need relief from, right? So there's more to risk mitigation than just getting a lower sticker tag. And I guess I would say my passion is that actually I started nursing school many years ago. I was stationed in California and outside of LA. That's where I started nursing school. And I saw some of the worst care ever in my life. It was heartbreaking because in my mind, nurses who are good come into the field not for the paycheck. Those are the nurses that tend to get burned out and they're not very good at the bedside. But we come in because we really care and we really want to make a difference. And that's been my life's passion since I was a little girl. And I had decided after seeing some of the worst care ever, I almost actually dropped out of nursing school. And then I had a baby and I said, nobody's going to do anything like that to my family. And so every time I'm working with anybody, I've always, like many of my nurse colleagues, we see our people. If you're my patient, if you're my member, you're mine. I have a real sense of stewardship. What can I do to help make that person's life better? And, nurses, when we reach a certain point in our career and our knowledge and our understanding and our prowess, if you will, then we enlarge that scope. It's not just the patient, it is the population of patients, right? So where now we're looking at employer groups and the employer is like a family of sorts. And that employer population is really important to nurture and take care of. I'm from small town Idaho, and I have seen cases where you have one or two members that go on dialysis, and it's not just a member that gets lasered off the plan. It's a whole bunch of people now pay higher premiums, or I've seen it close doors. You get some high cost claims and employers say, matter of fact, Chamber of Commerce, I have folks that say, oh, I can't do this anymore. And we should never, that's crushing, not just for a patient, but a community and our nation, quite honestly.
Oh man, I love it. I love when we're able to draw the correlation, the bridge between doing something that is good, right? Something that feels good, something that's impacting a life. That's why we call it impact healthcare, right? And it's why our company is called Next Impact. I mean, that word impact and impacting a life. The good news about all the guests that we have on this podcast and in this conversation, the ability to impact a life actually ends up saving people a significant amount of money. And so as we were prepping for this, you made a statement that I wanted to be our jump off point. And you said, and I quote, dialysis, it shouldn't be a surprise. I want you to expand on that, because as somebody who has been in the business for 22 years and started in stop loss, dialysis, in fact, end-stage renal is one of those that you're like, bells, it is, you're getting lasers, it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's terrible for the patient themselves. They go through a lot, and everybody kind of actually feels surprised, I gotta tell you. And so the fact when you said that is such a big deal. Let's use that as our jump off point. Dialysis, it shouldn't be a surprise. Expand on that.
Well, quite honestly, I consider it a personal and professional failure if one of our clients has a member that surprises to dialysis. Who was sleeping? That's the first thing. Was I sleeping at the wheel? How did we miss that? It should never hit your groups as a surprise. When you consider that diabetes and high blood pressure account for almost 70% of the cases we see where people end up on dialysis, those are largely preventable factors. We can do something about those conditions, right? Now, dialysis can hit as a surprise because of sepsis. Somebody has an infection that becomes, starts shutting down their body organs, or they get hit by a truck, right? And they lose all their blood. That makes sense that would be a surprise, but that's not how most of the cases of dialysis are happening, right? They're sneaking up on people, and there's a whole lot of reasons for that. It's not all maleficent, right? There's a little bit of turning the head, because quite honestly, and I'll just tell you one of my pet peeves. I think I told you earlier that, we talk a lot in healthcare. We talk a lot about prevention, right? We see the value of prevention. And in the field, I feel like saying, show me, where is it? I don't see it. All I see is, hey, there's no problem. You got a touch of sugar. And when you need insulin, I got a shot for you over here, right? And then, oh, there's no problem until you need dialysis. Because when you need dialysis, I got a chair for you. That's where all the money is. And quite honestly, it's infuriating. It should not happen that way. And I would even say when it's people that we love, right? When it's your family, your loved one, you certainly don't want to see it happen that way, right? So our passion is not only mitigating the cost of the surprise, right? Yeah, when the house is on fire, you can call us. We'll come put out your fire. You don't have to wait for renewal. But quite honestly, after the fire's out, how about we not have another one? Or if there's not a fire yet, is there smoke? Can we maybe stop that from bursting into flame? Because I've seen that happen where we have people who are right on the brink of dialysis, and you can absolutely turn those people around. And in the cases where you can't, you can absolutely keep that from blowing up your plan. And the cool part is that when you do that, the only way that you do that is by taking care of the member who's in the very center. Everything good comes when we take care of that one member in the center.
Yeah, I love that. So maybe for the audience, and quite honestly, for my benefits, let's start at the foundational and go stats. How prevalent, when we start thinking about the journey, right, from the prevalency of the things that are leading up to eventually what is end-stage renal dialysis. Talk to me about the stats, and talk to me about that journey that somebody goes from here to here, so that people understand maybe the magnitude of the conversation, and then also where people are at checkpoints. So again, so they can start understanding there might be smoke here. Here's some things to dig into.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is diabetes, right? And what do they say? Something like, I can't remember. I just read that stat. Something like 3 out of 5 Americans have prediabetes. I mean, it's crazy, the numbers. When you consider that 1 in 7 of us working adults in the United States have kidney disease, and 90% of those people don't have a clue. And there's a lot of reasons why they don't understand that they have kidney disease, right? Kidney disease oftentimes isn't diagnosed unless a certain lab, a GFR, which is not a special lab, it has to be under 60 for 3 readings in a row. People have to be spilling protein in their urine. So a lot of times this very simple, basic, regular lab isn't caught. People are declining year after year, but there's no alarms that go off until they're sitting in stage 3 or 4. And they say, what the heck happened to stage 1 and 2? And quite honestly, when you look at diabetes being the number 1 driver, it's an epidemic, right? Diabesity is an epidemic in the United States. Everybody, but if you think about that, the people, our workers, we live really fast lives. We go, go, go. A lot of times, whether you work at home or not, you hit the floor running at 7 a.m., you grab a cup of coffee and a bagel. You do that years and years and years, right? And we're choosing foods that are quick. They either have a barcode or cellophane wrapper, right? And those kinds of faster foods put a lot of demand on a pancreas, right? And people end up with diabetes and no idea how they have diabetes, right? But they do that over years and years because they've worn out their poor little pancreas. Well, the problem with that, diabetes drives high blood pressure. It's harder to pump syrup than it is blood, right? Heart has to work harder and it tears up the inside lining of your blood vessels. And then you have more need for cholesterol. And then we have a tired heart because there's all this extra fluid. People have congestive heart failure. There's all kinds of things that are happening very quietly, right? Because people don't feel horrible. And then you find that these people, even though they may not have a diagnosis of kidney disease showing up in the claims, you're going to see that these multi-morbid folks, right, become more and more expensive. As a matter of fact, every time you have a member, whether there's kidney disease is diagnosed or not, every time they advance in stage, they become 57% more expensive in terms of their overall cost of care. That's significant, right? So you have a member who's not diagnosed and they're at CKD1, they cost more than somebody who doesn't have CKD. Right? Then they progress to CKD2 and their cost goes up. I had a member the other day, the only trigger that we could see in claims was lupus, but their overall cost of care was like $176,000. Well, I'll bet you my license there's kidney disease in there. Absolutely. Right? So there are some of these triggers that we know damage kidneys and it's not rocket science, right? It's not some patented secret. We know these things are damaging kidneys. And every time they quietly advance, you're going to see an uptick in terms of their spend. These members get sicker and sicker, and they don't know why. A lot of times we say, well, if they just did what they were supposed to do, they wouldn't be in this position. But when you talk to the members, they say, well, yeah, see my doctor for 3 minutes and they tell me to go home and lose weight, or go home. Yeah, I need to get my A1C down. I had a nurse patient the other day say, yeah, I'm so glad you called because I have this problem and nobody's been able to tell me anything about it. I mean, I don't work with the GFR all the time. I don't know what this means. My doctor just tells me I need to get my numbers better, but I don't know how to do that. Right. So, I mean, and then they end up sitting in a dialysis chair and they're miserable and they're really sick. And because they're so sick, they don't do well on dialysis either. Right. And then they're expensive because now their dialysis isn't 3 days a week. It's 5 to 6 days a week because they need to pull off all that fluid. And then they end up in the ER and the ICU and they don't have a clue what they could do to make that different. And that to me is a real shame. It's like standing by and watching people. We watch people. It's like you pick them up and you put them on a conveyor belt and you watch that conveyor belt take people right off of the cliff. And there's lots of us that could do something about that standing around, right? I say we yank them off that conveyor belt or at least tell them, hey, there's a cliff at the other end of this. you want to hop off, right?
So Kimberlee, I'm literally like in my mind picturing a conveyor belt. You used to watch The Price is Right, and they had that guy, the little ukulele, and then he eventually falls off. So I'm picturing that in my head. If you had to give advice to advisors, to employers out there, I mean, you said all of the key words, right? Dialysis, obesity, heart and kidney. I mean, all of these things. Everybody, there's not a plan that I've ever looked at in my entire career that hasn't had one of those things that are prevalent. The question really becomes, it's really funny, right? So if I was still in my old seat as an advisor working for a very large firm, I would get claims data from XYZ carrier, and it would tell me how many people have a diagnosis code of X, and it might say that there's a disease management program. And then with a straight face and a nice, beautiful 7-inch binder, they would look at me with a smile on their face and says, and we've outreached to people, we're having 4% participation.
Well, there's a reason for that, right?
So I want to hear from you as somebody who is in the weeds, who's making that outreach, who's engaging the patient. What do you say to all of the employers and the advisors out there of what is it that they can actually start doing?
Call us. Well, there's a reason why people have such low participation rates, right? There's nothing in it for the member. I don't have to pay my kids $20 to get them not to slam their finger in the car door, right? There's nothing in it for them to slam their finger in the car door, right? So members aren't stupid, and they're not pets, they're not animals. They don't need a carrot or a stick to do something that's going to benefit them personally, right? Now, members will figure out a way to put their Fitbit on their dog and jog their dog outside while they're driving the car just so they can get a discount on their medication, right? But most people, I've never had a member say, I would like to get my cholesterol down to such and so, and I'd like to drop my A1C to such and so. But I do have members all the time who say, I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. I'd like to fit in my size 10 dress again. I had a member one time say, actually, after feeling tired and getting through the program, he says, I have my 6-pack abs back. And my wife looks at me differently. Now, his goal wasn't to improve his A1C. His goal wasn't to improve his blood pressure, but he did all that, right? Because there was something in it for him personally. Members don't engage because of a flyer, a postcard, an app, a text. They engage because there's something in it for them. And there's a therapeutic, professional helping relationship. The other thing too is that, when you're a large case management program, their purpose is like the lighthouse, right? Or like if I'm a hick chick, right? So you get up in the Forest Service and you've got the lookouts, right? They're looking for the forest fires, right? This kind of nurse coaching program that we offer is like, it's as belly to belly as you can get over the phone, right? It's really working with members to uncover and really help turn on the light bulb for them. Most of these folks don't know that they have any problem, right? So you would think participation would be really low. Our engagement rates are anywhere from 50 to 75% right now. And that's because we're going to where the members are. We're helping them see where they are. And then we're helping tap into, okay, what do they want, right? And how do we help them get there? And I'll tell you where they don't want to end up on dialysis, right? They don't want to get to retirement and have all their retirement pay going to, the hospital or the doctors, right? But quite honestly, they have not yet seen or heard or believed that there was a possibility that they could do anything different, right? So we go to where they are. And it's a funny thing, Lester, when you go to where other people are and you take them by the hand, once they've got your hand, you can take them anywhere, you want to take them. You can't do that when you're up here and the member's here and you're saying, come on, right?
So Kimberlee, I want to dive into this because you said engagement rates and you said the word 60, 70, 50, 70, I think is what you said percent. And I'm thinking, oh my God, as somebody who has paid, insert carrier name, $6 PPM to have their diabetes management program, and they still come back and say 4% of, people are participating. How, talk to me about the tactics, if you're okay sharing, about how you're getting that 50 to 70%. I know you said that intrinsic value, make it about the patient, but is the employer putting a face of Kimberlee on there and saying Kimberlee's going to be calling you, or how's that tactic, your best case scenario? Well, how is that working that you're getting that engagement?
I mean, having company support, employer support is important, but that's not where the magic happens, right? The magic happens person to person. And when you think about any good program, whether it's ours or anybody else's, the reason why you want to invest in a program, a nurse care management program, is that you want to save some money, right? And you want to help your employees be healthier, because then, you can afford their health care. You can provide better benefits, and you can, have more capital so that the company can be viable. That's why we invest in these kinds of programs, right? So, however, the reason why these kind of programs work is because there's a behavior change that occurs, right? There's a member-specific behavior change that occurs. And that behavior change, it's hard. How do you get people to prick their finger? When my finger hurts, I'm sick and tired of pricking my finger. Holy heck, I go to work all day and I come home and I've got just a couple hours to spend with my family. Now you want me to put on my apron and be Donna Reed, and who the heck has time to exercise, right? This is the challenge, but that's what we want. That's what we know needs to happen for these folks. So that doesn't happen in an app or a letter. You can educate people to death, right? It's not a matter of education. If it was, I would be my perfect weight, right? It's not just that. It's a coaching paradigm. Matter of fact, we use a coaching paradigm that really helps these members figure out what they want and how to get it. But that happens person to person. There's a therapeutic helping relationship, and that you can't automate. You can't script it. You can't, it's not a little answer tree that you read off of a screen.
Right. There's no KPI in that.
Right. It's a skill set. It's the heart, it's the passion, the drive, the person, and the skill set. When you marry those two things together and you put the patient in the center, and they're the center of everything that the nurses do here at Specialty Care Management, then that's how we create the magic.
So again, I'm fascinated about this conversation, although simple. One of my favorite podcasters says, when he talks about simple things that are simple to do are also simple not to do, right? And so that's that double-edged sword. So if I was, is Kimberlee calling me because she sees something in claims and then is outreaching? So A, how does that first warning flag come out? And then simulate, let's say Lester is that person, simulate your outreach. Let's assume that I hate insurance. I don't want to wake up in the morning wanting to manage my diabetes. I live a busy life. I don't sleep well. All of those things. Simulate that person in that call, because I'm dying to, because again, other people are going to say, well, we have people that are reaching out. Right? Why? I want to understand kind of that secret sauce, because I'm fascinated with it. So what's that trigger point and the secret sauce? Let's dive into that.
Well, so you're right. So we do find those triggers in claims. Members don't want to know that you see their claims. It's like looking in their underwear drawer, right? So there's some tact involved in your respecting their autonomy. But I'll share an example. We once had a patient who, when the nurse called, there's a patient, she just sounded awful. And really, she did not want to talk to the nurse. But the nurse recognized something. As a skilled nurse who's been in the trenches, when you're talking to somebody, you can see the swollen legs, right? You can see them. You can just see them in your mind's eye. And so this nurse, she knew that something wasn't quite right with this patient. And so she found out that this particular patient had gone in for a pre-op. She was going to have a total hip, and her blood pressure in her pre-op appointment was like 220 over 110. And she did not want to talk to the nurse. She didn't want to participate in the program. She would not get off the couch and check her blood pressure for her because she felt too sick. Well, the nurse, when she hung up with a member who did not want to participate, the nurse called around, found the doctor on call for that member, and got an order for her to help with her blood pressure, and called the patient back and gave the patient the order from her physician and monitored that patient for over an hour to make sure that the blood pressure came down. So, and that member obviously participated. She likely kept that member from having a stroke. We know at least she kept her out of the emergency room, and that patient fell in love with the nurse, right? So it's service. We had another member one time who he was supposed to go in for a procedure. When he went in for his procedure, they had to cancel it because his GFR, his kidney function, was too low. And he was told dialysis was going to be inevitable for him. Now, this particular member had refused to participate for the months prior. Matter of fact, it had been almost a year. And the patient had been closed. Now, when we close a member because they don't participate, it doesn't mean that they're done, right? We continue to watch in claims, and when we see things like a hospitalization, we'll reach back out very gently just to see if things have changed, because things do change, right? And sure enough, when the nurse reached back out to this member, the member's words were, "I wish I would have talked to you 6 months ago. I'm being told I need dialysis," and he felt like his life was over. And in working with that patient, the nurse was able to keep that member off of dialysis for years. And how do you put a price tag on that? Not, it totally changed this person's life, where his life was over. And, now he has hope and he's able to continue working. It's life-changing. So it's not a one and done. It's a very much person to person, a real human connection. It's not a friend, right? We're not friends, we're friendly, but we have a skill set and we have a servant heart, if you will, to serve members in whatever capacity they need and they're willing to receive. So a nurse has to have a certain amount of autonomy to do that, right?
Right.
So that takes a skill set and some experience.
So I want to, because you talked about that guy, and you also said that in the beginning about hey, once we realize that the fire is starting to burn, somebody is on the way to dialysis, there's a way to prevent and even reverse that. I want to start this end part of this conversation, and I want to end in here with the price tag and both hard dollar and soft dollar. Talk to me about dialysis. I think everyone's seen it. I think everybody understands that it's expensive. But I kind of want to put a price tag to it. And then I want to end with that story of, just because somebody has that diagnosis doesn't mean that that's, the route that they have to take. And talk to me about it. You said that patient, I'm sure you have millions. Talk to me about that patient that you helped do that, because I want the employer to hear this and says, okay, I'm not doing this with my claims data. I'm not looking at it. I don't know if I want them to ask the carrier that they're using that's charging them money for this disease management program, what are they doing? But I want them to understand the hard and the soft dollar value of taking that extra step. So talk to me about the hard and soft dollar. Hey, how much does this thing cost? Is somebody out of work 1 day, 5 days, 6 weeks, whatever that might be? Let's start there.
Yeah. So, the average paid claim after discounts in the United States is around $530,000. the average bill charge is somewhere around $930,000. We see them anywhere from, 1.2 up to $4 million. I've seen those bill charges. But after your discount, the average that we see is about $530,000. Our strategy, if you will, is unique in that we underwrite a flat fixed case rate, a capitated case rate that saves these groups about 80%. Our average price tag, if you will, for dialysis, our corridor is somewhere around 120 to 220, 230, somewhere in there. I've never seen a dialysis claim over $300,000 with us. I've never seen one get to $300,000, quite honestly. So that repricing strategy is really valuable. But along with the repricing, when a member is on our cost containment strategy, if you will, it's not really we don't describe it as a cost containment strategy because it's more robust than that. It's working with plan language and whatnot, but also providing that nurse support. Because that's a capitated case rate, what that means is if members aren't well managed and they don't understand how their self-care impacts how well they do on dialysis, then that, it's not often, or it's not uncommon to see members end up going, like we said earlier, 5-6 days a week, right? So, well, if you have a member who doesn't do well, and they require extra dialysis, that doesn't come out of the employer's pocket, that comes out of our pocket, right? So, that nurse support is a gift with purchase, if you will, with the dialysis.
So Kimberlee, I want to make sure people understood this. So your approach is to work with an employer to understand that this is a patient and we're going to assume all of the financial risk for that patient on behalf of the employer and therefore take all of the management of that employee or that member.
Well, once I have that case rate in place, that's all the employer is going to pay is the case rate. And we have 100% retention. So we've never had any extra monies paid out with our case rate. That nurse support is really important for several reasons. One, like as you say, that makes sure that members actually do well on dialysis. That's not only good for the member and the employer, and it's good for us as well, right? But also to make sure they understand their Medicare benefit. As you know, for most employers, when they have a member go to dialysis, it's a 33-month white knuckle ride, right? And that's if the member chooses dialysis. Remember, an employer can't entice a member to choose Medicare. And neither should the dialysis facilities, right? But they do. They have banks of nurses, and their job is to convince people not to enroll in Medicare. And so we come along and we educate members to make sure that they understand their Medicare benefit to protect themselves. And we help them enroll in Medicare. We help make sure that that form gets filed. A lot of times they'll have that form completed, but nobody sends it anywhere, right? So helping those members navigate that holistic picture of that dialysis journey for the member is really important.
So I don't want to leave that conversation. I want people to make sure they understand, because this is unbelievable. So if I was in the normal world, right, any Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, Humana plan, who's going to help me do this, right? There is no vested interest for the carrier to do this. They don't have people that are there. And quite honestly, what they call premium, what the client calls premium, they're calling revenue. So they want claims to go up so that they can increase costs. The dialysis clinic gets more money when that person stays on the employer's plan. So there's no interest there either. So in this scenario, the only person that has a vested interest to actually save anybody money is either the patient and or the plan. And in your scenario, you guys are taking not only the overall financial risk of this, you're actually putting the people in place to mitigate that. But you've got a actually financial benefit to make sure that it stays underneath that number, because you guys make the spread on that. And so it's the only person that's actually sitting invested, financially vested in the proper outcome that we're all trying to achieve.
Right. And the other thing that really, quite honestly, between you and me really juices me up about what we do is that in other strategies they've seen, there's no mechanism, if you will, to bridle these very predatory claims. When you talk to employers and patients, the bill charges for dialysis feel predatory. Feels like we're taking advantage of people who are at their very most vulnerable. People don't choose to go on dialysis. They either have a transplant or dialysis or they die, right? So this isn't an optional kind of thing. And so in this strategy, our renal risk reduction strategy that we created is one that really has the potential to help put a bridle on otherwise unbridled claims type. So it's a holistic way to reduce that overall risk.
Let's end this with the wow story, right? So pick that one story that you love. You've said a couple, which I've written them down exactly what time we talked about it because I want to highlight those. But what's the one that you even choke up a little bit? Because again, the cool part about this, having two parents that have passed from cancer, is at this time when this member is going through this, they're as scared and as confused as life will ever make them be scared or confused. They're having to navigate health care. They're having to navigate health insurance, and they're having to navigate the reality of the severity of their illness, which could, as they start thinking about it, be the ultimate severity. And so all of that is where you're helping a member in its most vulnerable time. So give me that one story that you always, you go to bed super smiling as you look at yourself, as you take your makeup off at night, smile about, you're taking your cape off and like, mama did good today. Mama did good.
Well, I can think of a couple. One is a spouse, and I'll just share this one really brief. So it was actually not the member, but the spouse that we talked to. So the spouse was the employee, and she worked in a manufacturing plant. And her husband needed dialysis. He hadn't started yet. And she was petrified. As a matter of fact, when we first called her, she was in tears. And this is how this can impact your spouses as well. So she was afraid to leave her husband and go to work. She was looking at, how am I going to stay home and take care of my husband? So that would cost them. And she was a critical employee, by the way. And how could she do this? And just in tears for her husband. And after working with a nurse, and this particular member, very interesting. Even providers need to be watched. And this particular provider, she was very interested in being able to do dialysis at home for him. And he wanted to do dialysis at home. The provider, on the other hand, was trying to tell them not to, right? Now, and there's some advantages to the group. When you have a member who absolutely, not only the money, but you figure when a member chooses a home modality and they complete their training, that shaves off 3 months. In other words, Medicare becomes primary 3 months earlier. So it shaves off 3 months for the plan. That's significant. Even if you just look at our case rate savings, say you have a case rate with us of $20,000, well, there's $60,000 that you shave off just by going to Medicare 3 months earlier. So, we were really instrumental in not only helping that employee who was the caregiver go back to work and feel good about it, but helping them get the modality that they chose, which also shaved off 3 months for the plan. The other member, real quick, that always comes to my mind, and it's the story I share all the time because it's when my light bulb, that's when I got really turned on to kidney disease, if you will. And it was many, many years ago. I was working home health and was called out to see a patient who had diabetes and blood sugars largely unmanaged. This was a very sick member, weeping legs. And now keep in mind, this patient was being followed by a family practice doctor, as most of your employees are, right? They're followed by an internist or family practice doctor. Small community. I love this physician. I would absolutely let her take care of me. She's brilliant. Anyway, so went out to see this patient just to change some dressings on her legs, and seeing her blood sugar being what it was, I asked the doc, I said, is there any reason why we can't draw some labs and see where her kidneys are? Sure enough, her GFR, glomerular filtration rate, how you spot check the kidney function, came back at 17. That's like she had 17% of her kidney function. She was 2 points away from end stage kidney disease, not a clue, right? And no diagnosis of kidney disease. And I got squillions of stories just like that, people who are that low that don't have a diagnosis. So I called the doctor and I said, hey, what do you think? Did you see her GFR? Should we get her in to see a nephrologist, right? Because you can't tell a doctor what to do, wink, wink, but good nurses do all the time. And she said to me, I don't even know what that means. And can we get her better first? And every time I share that story, the people have the same kind of response. Oh my gosh, what do you mean she didn't know? Well, she's not a nephrologist. She's a family practice doctor. She's brilliant. She's an internist. She doesn't spend her days in kidneys, right? And so many of our patients are in that same position where they're being followed by a family practice doctor. And keep in mind, specialists are in short supply. Doctors are in short supply, but specialists even more so. And the goal of the family practice doctor is to preserve those limited resources, right? So they are supposed to try to get them better first. And understanding that when a physician makes a referral to a specialist, they're losing some of their own revenue, right? Now, I'm not saying that was this doctor's motivation. I loved her. She's an amazing doctor, but that's just the business of healthcare. That's how it goes. So anyway, when I explained to her what that meant, we got her in to see a nephrologist. She started working with a nurse, called in, we had her see a dietitian, started working. Now the patient was very motivated at that point. When she saw where she was, she had known people on dialysis. She did not want any part of that. So was she motivated and invested? Abso-freaking-lutely. And I'll tell you, when people have enough of the right information, they choose wisely for themselves. Nobody wants to be sick, tired, fat, lazy, broke. Nobody wants to end up on dialysis. When they understand where they are, it's a game changer, right? There's these twin powers of just enough fear to motivate them to get their fanny off of the fence post, right? But hope that I can turn this around. Right? Fear without hope puts people in a corner, right? And so anyway, within 2 months, I kid you not, Lester, 2 months. Now this patient, she was on 2 different types of insulin and she was on 2 different oral medications for her diabetes. She was off of all of it, but 1 tablet of metformin, and her kidney function doubled. She went from 17 to 34. And that's when my career took a twist. That's when I really started focusing on kidney disease. And we've replicated that over and over and over again with so many people. So, regardless of where a patient is, I'll tell you, you can always make things better. That doesn't always mean that you avoid dialysis. Now, this particular member, she stayed off of dialysis. We moved. I followed her for like 12 years. She still had not gone on dialysis. That is a huge win. Right? That doesn't always happen that way. So sometimes it's a matter of keeping them off dialysis. Sometimes it's a matter of let's slow this down so we can have the best start, so that a member doesn't have to start in a hospital kind of emergency experience. Let's have them start off so they can start at home, or let's help them get more time so they can get a transplant sooner and they can do better. So you can always do something to make your life and your situation better. And that's our goal.
Awesome. Man, I just, I really enjoyed that story for a lot of reasons. Kimberlee, I think a lot of people are going to have this, if I was using the emoji with the really big eyeballs, it would be right there. Where do they learn more about Kimberlee, your great company? Where can they hear more stories about this and understand what they could be doing? How do they keep up with you?
They can reach out with any one of our team. We're all over LinkedIn, Specialty Care Management. Our website is specialtycm.com. And let's be friends.
Awesome. And to our Impact Healthcare crowd, this is, I'm going to end this with the term, right? Riches are in the niches, right? When we look at some of the things, we're not talking about quantity of people. We're talking about a small number of people, but we're talking about impacting, like severely impacting, to the good word, severely, not only the cost, but the quality of health and vibrancy and value in their own life. Fear without hope puts people in the corner, is what I just heard. And nobody puts baby in the corner when Kimberlee is involved. So Kimberlee, thank you so much for being our guest. If our crowd wants to get more updates when we drop episodes, please join our text community. It is area code 813-537-6992. Kimberlee, it was wonderful having you on today's episode of Impact Healthcare. Thank you for being a shining light to many patients across the country and doing what you do. We appreciate you. And everybody else, have a great day and tune into the next episode of Impact Healthcare. Thanks so much.
You've been listening to Impact Healthcare, people and strategies that are disrupting the health benefits industry with Lester Morales. Remember, the journey to getting 20% savings on your healthcare benefits starts with total transparency. Remember to subscribe to the Impact Healthcare podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.